Now back to Outdoors with Larry Ray on ESPN 790. Brought to you proudly by the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, Gaston's White River Resort, and Barton Power Sports.
Okay, welcome back to Outdoors with Larry Ray, and I told you we'll have a special guest on today's show. Many of you probably know the name John Muir, and you think he's died. Well, he's not. He's sitting right here with me at over in Pigeon Forge as we're at the 25th Annual Wilderness Wildlife Week, and you folks out there know that I've been a real supporter of that, even though it takes 423 miles to come from Memphis to Pigeon Forge. This gentleman right here has been covered a lot of miles and everything, and we're privileged to have on Outdoors with Larry Ray, Lee Stetson, and Lee has been doing this for Lee Stetson has been doing this for a few years, portraying John Muir.
It's true.
Lee, tell my listeners out there a little bit about how this developed. Since '83, if I'm not mistaken, you've been doing programs at Yosemite and things.
Exactly so. I first went up to Yosemite in 1982 to begin some research on the character of Muir, which had fascinated me since I was living in California, and I was immediately smitten by his contributions, obviously, to the national park system. He's known as the father of national parks, the creator of the Sierra Club.
Yes.
His astonishing adventures and the poetic turn of his words all fascinated me and compelled me to continue.
Did you ever think in your wildest dreams that this is what you were going to do when you were a young man growing up? Now, I know you've got some ties, Idaho, California. I look like you got some Hawaiian ties in there, too. Is this something that... what did you want to be? And this is one of the questions I ask people. What did you want to be, Lee, when you were a little boy? What did you want to be when you was growing up?
You know, I'm not sure I had a real design on what it was. I felt lucky just to survive most of my boyhood, not in any negative way, really.
Yes, right.
But rather that I didn't really come out with a plan. Eventually, I managed to get to college, and I lived in Maine and Massachusetts.
You did?
As a younger man.
Okay.
Yeah. And not until in my 20s did I leave for other environments and wound up in Hawaii for many years, where I had a theater program there, a theater company.
Okay.
That's still there. But again, eventually wound up doing as much as I could in Hawaii, I thought, and decided to move to California to chase fame and fortune in Los Angeles. Didn't find either of those, but I did find the John Muir Trail, which managed to have me escape from Los Angeles occasionally.
Well, from Shakespeare to Neil Simon, in Hawaii 5-0, I know that this is a varied career, and to be now, what you do is a fascinating life. You travel.
I do.
You travel, and how do you become? Do you find yourself sometimes you're not sure whether you're Lee Stetson or you're John Muir?
Well, if I ever get confused, my wife will certainly straighten me out very quickly. No, I've been fortunate to be able to borrow about 7 or 8 hours worth of materials that Mr. Muir contributed to his literature, and by adopting that material, I've managed to create a number of different productions that enables me to hit various themes on wilderness and environmental issues. And by doing so, I come up with a varied number of programs that enables me to keep these programs going around the country, in Yosemite National Park for the most part.
Yes.
But in around the country and occasionally outside of the country as well.
And the character itself, a lot of people probably ask you, how much work does it take to keep that beard like that? You look like one of the duck commanders here. You look...
Oh, I suppose I do.
Yeah, or maybe ZZ Top.
I'm often referred to as ZZ Top. Yeah. But no, it's I started growing it for the role back in the 80s, and of course it's been my trademark, I suppose, ever since. So.
It is. It looks like you really enjoy this. This is...
Oh, I do.
It's work. I know that. You're traveling. You're at Pigeon Forge, a long way from... what you live in what part of California?
I live just outside of Yosemite National Park.
Okay. All right. So that's a very distance.
It is.
And your crowds are different, I'm sure. Your audiences are different.
Oh, they are. They're everything from a group of people on a hike somewhere, or a saunter, as Mr. Muir would have it, or to many hundreds, as we've observed here at Pigeon Forge.
Hikers. You kind of took a plug at hikers in your presentation there.
Well, Muir believed that hiking was a vile word.
It's a vile word. That's what you said and everything.
One should saunter through the wilderness.
And when I hear you talk, and you've got the dialect, you've got, and I know, fascinated by the Ken Burns. How was that to be a part of that?
Oh, extraordinary, as you can imagine. When Mr. Burns decided to sort of tap me on the shoulder and ask me if I would be a commentator initially on the character of Muir for his series on America's Best Idea on national parks. And I was glad to do that, and then he later asked me to record many of Muir's sayings, quips, and stories, and I was glad to do that for him as well.
The dialect.
Yeah.
Did that come easy? What is your family roots? It seems like it just comes in out. Now you're talking, so give my audience a little preview of what John Muir would sound like.
Well, climb the mountains, get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into the trees, etc.
Amazing, amazing.
Well, it is what I've been doing for a good number of years. So.
A good number of years, particularly, and we're going to have a couple of segments here with Lee Stetson to talk a little bit on the next segment, a little bit about the environment and things along that line, because I know he is a spokesperson, and talk about another one of my favorite characters, and that's Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah. That Mr. Muir and Teddy Roosevelt. I've read every book on both of these guys, and that's a Southern expression. These guys,
sure.
And everything, bully type things like that. But we got a varied audience here, Lee, because we go out through North Mississippi, East Arkansas, West Tennessee. Of course, it's closer to Washington, D.C., where we are right now, than it is in Memphis. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Memphis.
I have.
Yeah. And so what is Memphis famous for?
Well, Elvis mostly.
Okay, all right, okay. You think Elvis would have got along with John Muir?
But actually, Memphis is famous for, and should be, music in general.
It is, yes. So what is your favorite music?
Oh, I suppose, well, I'm not sure I have a favorite music. I'm very fond of classical. I'm very fond of bluegrass. So.
Okay, yeah, the bluegrass part, I think, would be fit into it. But I was just going to kind of ask him if he'd ever been to Memphis, because Memphis is famous for Elvis and barbecue and things along that line,
sure.
But do you ever, what's the hardest part of being this, what you do?
It's not really. I don't have any particular difficulties in relation to the work. I do have a great number of productions that I do now, and since they all involve the same character, and frequently I need to shift from one production to another, I sometimes get confused. But it's usually temporary, and the audience usually doesn't perceive that I am as confused as I am. Well, so it seems to work out just fine.
First of all, thank you, Lee, for being with us.
No,
I'm getting carried away by here, but you can go to your website at, what is it now?
Is www.johnmuirlive.com.
There you go. You can go to that and find his presentations. But as I talked on a different segment with Lee, talk about if John, well, he is alive, really, in you, but what would he think about? What in this today's time, because our environment, we deal with so many things.
It's true.
Well,
Muir was responsible in large measure for the creation of the Sierra Club in California, back when the Sierra Club was essentially defending Yosemite National Park and the Sierra Mountains in large measure was the task. Of course, that task environmentally has been expanded by the need, and many other organizations, all the way from the most radical of wilderness groups to very, very conservative groups. People interested in preserving the wilderness and preserving our environment, each taking on larger and larger tasks. Muir himself didn't understand and would not have, given his how early he was in American history. Although he was the first to alarm the nation about the loss of wilderness, the loss of wildlife, he did a tremendous service to the nation by alarming people in terms of the need. But he would not have imagined that we could pollute the entire ocean, could not imagine that the entire atmosphere of the planet could be threatened by human activity, didn't even believe that the wilderness of Alaska could be sufficiently, the Tongass forest that has been pretty much abused by some lumber interests. He could not have imagined the task before us. Nuclear rain, there's a host of things that nowadays is so much larger a problem. But he does speak still to the fundamental issues of preservation and the integrity of landscapes and ecology as a whole. He speaks to animal rights and the question of extinction. And he speaks especially to the invigorating effect of engaging the wilderness and the healthiness that is produced by doing so. So he still speaks to us in a very resounding way, and it's unfortunate that his message is unhappily even more important today than it was in his own day.
It really is more important, and we're talking to Lee Stetson. He is the portrayed John Muir in several productions, Yosemite National Park, to more than 250,000 visitors since 1983. And I know that Yosemite is close to you. And what were your thoughts recently with the two guys that climbed, made all the headlines when they hand and feet? What if John Muir was at the top of that mountain when these guys were doing? What was what's your take on that, Lee?
Well, I would have congratulated them, I suppose, for an incredible human feat. But Muir himself, of course, was capable of walking to the top of a great many mountains, and certainly did so. But he was not the kind of climber that we have nowadays, with the result of better equipment and certainly better training.
But he was at that top long before these guys.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He topped out on virtually every mountain in the Sierra Nevada.
Amazing. I don't know how many miles he's traveled, or he traveled on foot and things along that line. Yosemite, let's talk about that, because it's almost impossible to drive through it. Did you mention that? There's so many people. The Smokies, of course, more people come to the Smokies than any other national park. And that's primarily because they're driving through it and everything. And you mentioned that in some of your, when people go to Cades Cove and they make the roundabout and everything, like, people don't get a chance to really get off the path and see what it's really like. Do you tell that Yosemite to the people that you talk to?
Oh, absolutely. The valley itself is experiencing something like, well, the park in general gets 4 million visitors a year. That's an enormous number of people. Yes. And most of them go to the valley. Mm-hmm. So, and most of them are concentrated in the summer months, so that experience would seem rather daunting for a lot of people who don't, who'd like to experience the solitude and peace that comes with environmental engagement, or the engagement in environments, I should say. But the truth is also that you can walk a quarter of a mile in almost any direction and very quickly escape the crowds. Yosemite National Park is the size of the state of Rhode Island. There is just endless vistas, as beautiful as the Yosemite Valley itself, and certainly all kinds of opportunity for people to play and be free and as in much solitude as they can ask for.
Okay, now you are in person. I've seen pictures. You look like him. You talk like him. To be him and to represent him, that's a pretty good honor. I mean, you've put yourself in some, I don't know, size shoes. And you look like your mannerism. I was watching some of your mannerisms and things like that. You have literally seen films of John Muir. I'm sure that you've read everything there was to do about it, because you want to do it right.
Well, I hope to be doing it right, but the truth is there is no moving film on Muir.
There is no? There's pictures. I've seen photographs, hasn't it?
There are photographs, yes.
Okay. But your movements look like, I said, that's got to be him. I mean, he's you know.
Well, you know, the movement is suggested by the words that Muir has penned.
Okay.
And indeed, people describe Muir, and there is a number of descriptions that I borrow some information from. But the truth is that all of the gestural life, the movement in general, just comes from engaging those words as honestly as I can and trying to make sure they are conveyed to people physically as well as vocally.
So when you walk down the street in your hometown or wherever you might be, they know who you are.
Well, many do, yes.
They do. When you go into the store
Sure.
or something along that line. And you kept mentioning about in the winter of his life. You got me feeling really old here. I mean, I'll be 72 in May, and I don't know how old was John Muir when he passed.
He was 76.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And it was said that he died of a broken heart.
Mm-hmm. It was often said, largely because a year before his death, the city of San Francisco had managed to acquire the water rights to a sister valley of Yosemite called the Hetch Hetchy. Mm-hmm. And that was a great disappointment to him after a 25-year battle, very nearly, of trying to preserve that valley. But it was ripped out of our national park and essentially given, in essence, to the city of San Francisco. We're still trying to restore Hetch Hetchy, and that effort is ongoing. But sure, he was very much disappointed. But, you know, he went on from that point to discover, among other things, one of the petrified forests in Arizona. Mm-hmm. He lived he died of pneumonia. And in those days, because antibiotics were not readily available, pneumonia was a big killer. So,
Well, I appreciate you being with us on Outdoors with Larry Ray. And folks, again, give them that website, Lee.
Oh, it is www.johnmuirlive.com.
And that's live because that's who he is when he's on the stage. And I know he has different things, and you can find the Teddy Roosevelt. You've struck up some things with Teddy.
I did.
And I know more about Teddy than I do John Muir, but I know a lot. But I know the Teddy's trip to the Amazon, some of that. And so we've had the privilege up here at Pigeon Forge for Wilderness Wildlife Week. And I suggest you folks go to mypigeonforge.com. Also look about for next year. Check on I almost said John. Check on Lee's schedule. He has a website. The website tells where he'll be. A lot of times in California, I know like that. But we need to get him in Memphis so he can experience. We have a great conscientious environmentalist group in Memphis that we do a lot of great things for. We're going to try to get Lee to come back to Memphis sometime.
Well, I do tour around the country. I'd be delighted to come back to Memphis.
I have a lot of listeners at the Convention and Tourism Bureau and everything. We need to get Lee Stetson to come into Memphis, okay? All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back on Outdoors with Larry Ray on ESPN 790.
Can find out all